Another theme in your writing about AI from other books, as well as the various other publications that you write, is that you advocate for putting humans in the loop. So, in other words, you believe that AI can augment human capabilities more effectively than replacing humans altogether. So, would you mind elaborating for our listeners on this viewpoint?
Sure. Yeah, I've written two books on this, and I was a sort of a convert. Uh, I started out with the idea that I would write a book about how AI was going to take away our jobs. And I even had a title in mind of No Humans Need Apply. And
Hmm.
then partially it was doing the research, partly my co-author, Julia Kirby, of this book convinced me, well, it should really be called Only Humans Need Apply because augmentation, smart humans and smart machines working alongside each other is both a far more effective approach and I think, at least thus far, a far more likely approach in organizations. And, I talked to a ton of companies about this, and not a single one yet has said, yeah, we've laid off a lot of people because of AI. In industrial manufacturing, robots, according to some economists, have led to moderately substantial job losses, about 3 jobs lost for every robot deployed on average. But in other areas of business and organization, hardly any job loss at all. And so I wrote another book, came out recently, called Working with AI, and it's 29 case studies of people who work with AI already on a day-to-day basis, and then a few chapters about the kind of lessons learned from those case studies. And again, nobody seems to be worried. The people who are doing these jobs aren't worried that they're going to be losing their employment anytime soon. And the combination seems to work pretty well. And so, maybe at some point we'll have the singularity occur that AI is better than us at everything we do. But for now, I think we're pretty safe.
Yeah, we have a whole episode dedicated to this topic. So, episode number 443 with Jeff Wald. It is actually when I'm talking to somebody at a party and they find out that I have a podcast and they're like, "Oh, well, I probably couldn't listen to it." I'm like, "Well, we do have some episodes that you don't need to be a technical expert to listen to," and I typically point them in the direction of this episode with Jeff Wald, which is all about this conversation. He blows my mind on air. He turns around. So the same experience that you had while you were writing this book, no, what we were intending on, no humans need apply, and then it becomes only humans need apply. The same, I go through that as this episode is being filmed. So Jeff does a great job of summarizing statistics from respected organizations like the WHO and academic papers to convince me and hopefully some other listeners that by and large, as you say, there are some cases where in particular industries, machines do replace, but on a society wide scale, just like every other industrial revolution beforehand, more jobs are created than are destroyed by these new technologies.
Yeah, I mean, there are tons of predictions, which you have probably seen, saying that a lot of jobs will be lost. There was this Oxford prediction, I think 47% of US jobs are automatable. There was a there have been several predictions about how many jobs would be lost and how many would be added. I think you're probably right, but we don't really have good data on anything except for all the predictions are wrong. They're certainly the negative ones are wrong, and we don't have a good way to even know how many jobs have been added because of AI. It takes the Bureau of Labor Statistics and all these government organizations a long time to sort of figure out there's a new category of job, and
Mm-hmm.
people are saying now, oh, with things like Chat GPT, generative technologies, prompt engineer is going to be a big new job,
Mm.
but it'll probably be 5 years before the Bureau of Labor Statistics recognizes something called prompt engineer, assuming it does
Right.
really turn out to exist.
Yep. Yeah, so that big paper, that Oxford paper, it seems to be, it's almost always the one that's cited in these are jobs susceptible to computerization. So that paper is called "The Future of Employment." It's by Carl Benedict Frey and Michael Osborne. And yeah, it's interesting how everyone always comes back to that
Yeah,
one
I'm a
paper.
visiting professor now at Oxford, and I have met with
Hmm.
Curl, and he's sticking to his guns. I think he probably will admit that it's taking a little longer than he thought. And they covered themselves by saying automatable, not that
Hmm.
they would actually be automated, but it's definitely, if it's happening very slowly.
Yeah, I've been trying to get the other author, Michael, on the show because I met him at a wedding before the pandemic. And
Uh,
yeah, through a friend whom I met at Oxford when I was studying there, and Michael very kindly he wrote a in my one book that I've written. Um, he did a what's it called when they write when somebody writes
Forward,
like
the forward,
no, not the
yeah.
forward, just
Oh,
like a
blurb,
positive, like
a blurb, an endorsement
an
technically, but people
endorsement.
just call them
Yes.
blurbs.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. He very kindly wrote an endorsement. um, and yeah, I would love to get him on the show someday. But yeah, really fascinating work, and it's interesting how that became the um, the gold standard citation for all this work. Even though now it's 10 years old, it's 2023.
Yeah, yeah. And there are predictions of what would happen in 2023, 2022. I think the World Economic Forum, I forget the exact numbers, but said that hundreds of millions of jobs would be lost and somewhat more would be gained by 2022. And I think now we can officially declare, wrong. Neither happened.
Right. Um, Something that we touched on in the preceding episode of this show, so episode number 646 with Zach Weinberg, we were talking about ChatGPT. We were talking about ways that you can derive commercial value from ChatGPT right away. And you happened to mention that a couple minutes ago, ChatGPT, and this idea of a prompt engineer. And I want to tie that ChatGPT to another word that you said a few minutes before that, which is artificial general intelligence, or yeah, an algorithm that would be able to have all of the learning capabilities of a human. And given your expertise, I think you might have a really interesting idea here. So, Zach, in that episode, he's a layperson, and so that's why I deliberately brought him on because I wanted to be showing to listeners, whether they're technical or not, that they can be deriving commercial value right now. Generating marketing copy, generating blog posts, generating copy for digital ads. All of these you can do these trivially easily now with ChatGPT. Um, and so Zach was concerned about AGI, and one of the things that we got talking about is how we don't need to have an algorithm that has the same kind of thinking as us, that can learn in the same way as us, for it to be incredibly powerful and incredibly dangerous. And ChatGPT kind of, it meets those criteria.
Right.
It
We're not statistical predictors of the next word that needs to come out or the next image or whatever. Yet it still manages to impress.
it still manages to impress, and so it there are ways that we can learn that it can't. But it's also capable of doing things. And the specific example that we end up talking about in the show is you can have a script in the style written by Larry David, where Snoop Dogg is an actor on the program, and Snoop Dogg raps about the global recession or the COVID pandemic or whatever you want. And so that capacity to be able to imitate the style of a rapper inside a comedy script, and it does it unbelievably well in a way that very few humans would be able to do, or if a human could do it, it'd be quite laborious. It would take hours of research on, the styles of the rapper and the writer, and to figure out how to tie that together into the content, and you get results instantaneously. And so even if even if we never have AGI in our lifetimes, things like ChatGPT coming out a few months ago show that there's going to be incredible generative AI capabilities that far exceed anything that a human can do, and that OpenAI has done an incredible job of putting guardrails around what ChatGPT outputs. But it's inevitable that in 6 months, somebody is going to be open sourcing how to be doing the same kind of thing, and then you can get around those guardrails and be generating, propaganda that is, targeted at a sociodemographic group. The same way that Zach, talking to Zach in the last episode, he can generate marketing copy for his digital ads. Dictators can be generating propaganda against, minority groups in their country.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, you're talking mostly about text, but obviously a lot of potential for image manipulation and deep fakes. And there are already some open source capabilities for that. OpenAI does not allow you to use public figures as inputs into your prompt, but other companies don't mind, and you already are seeing some of that. And so, and sadly, I don't see any sort of regulatory action happening quickly in the United States at all, at least. So I think these capabilities are going to get way ahead of what we ought to be doing with them.
Yeah, and I think I can't remember if I ended up discussing this on air or if it was after we'd stopped recording with Zach for the preceding episode. But my go-to answer, my kind of boilerplate answer when people say to me, "Oh, isn't AI going to cause terrible damage in the coming decades? These kinds of capabilities are out of control." The boilerplate answer that I come back to is that humans have been creating structures beyond any individual's control for millennia. Governments, armies have done horrible things that nobody wants that outcome from that structure having been created, and hopefully we don't end up having the same kind of havoc wreaked in the 20th century by armies happen by AI in the 21st century. But hopefully we, mistakes are inevitable, but hopefully we catch on to those quickly and they don't become pervasive.
Yeah, and I think that humans are also very good at knowing what is sort of real or human based. I mean, we've all been receiving for decades now marketing content that is intended to be personalized, but I think we can almost always recognize that's generated by some database marketing engine, and they don't know me. And despite the fact that they say, "Dear Tom," and maybe even, recognizing the image on the envelope of a handwritten address, we start to be able to figure that out. It takes a while. And I think that will be true with things like ChatGPT and so on. I think we'll come to recognize the amazingly good, but still relatively low quality of much of the text that it produces.
Yeah,
and maybe it'll make us even appreciate more the truly human and creative stuff that comes out.
Yeah, I think that idea of when you see fake handwriting on an envelope that comes in, you're like, oh man, this is going to be salesy for sure.
Yeah, you don't even open it anymore, right?
Yeah. I guess similarly, if you're on a website and you're getting attention right away and somebody's willing to serve you and spend time with you, instantly you'll be like, okay, this is obviously a bot, no matter how good the quality of conversation is.
Yeah, no human would ever give me immediate service.
Exactly. Yeah.